Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Tom Stewart here. Our guest today is Jason Cupp, and this is Smart Business Moves. Jason, how in the world are you?
You know what, Tom? I'm pretty good for it being our busy season is October 1st through March 1st, and it's very busy. But I'm doing really good in that crazy busyness. So all is good. All is good in the world as far as what we can see right now.
What makes those periods of time busier than the other periods of time?
It's interesting. I think that most business owners kind of earmark this time as we get closer to the end of the year to start thinking strategically about 2023, everything from the people plan, maybe a refinement in products and services, a refinement in pricing for sure, especially in today's economy, and then also building that budget. So we see that around the holidays, the folks that we work with, they really begin to become very intentional about creating that plan and being very strategic in that, and maybe peeling away from their business a little bit to start to think. There's also tax planning that oftentimes kind of triggers people on about November the 1st. They start thinking about tax planning and what their tax situation is. So that means that our email lights up a little bit more, and we want to have a little bit of hand holding and some guidance in a lot of those discussions.
This is the time to be thinking about that. You don't want to be waiting until the end of December and ask yourself, do I need to buy another vehicle for tax purposes? You want to get ahead of that.
Absolutely. And I think that, this year has been such an interesting year. And I don't know if your data suggests it, that most of all of these service industry businesses that, you and I are so fortunate to have conversation with, they have been very, very, very busy. Most have posted an amazing top line sales number, and they're coming off of a year that has an extreme level of success. And if that's not you, for anybody who's listening right now or watching, there needs to be a peer into why that isn't, because I would say that the majority of the folks that I talk to, that they have had a banner year. And they're also paying attention to all these headlines. They're paying attention to what's going on in the economy and in the world, and with unemployment and people and all this kind of stuff. And they want to make sure they're really well prepared for whatever is dished out to them in 2023. But it's also a reset of expectations, because 2022 might not repeat itself depending on what industry and business sector and geography that you're in.
So do you see differences, different parts of the country, different cities?
I do. I do. It's interesting. As I think and those that maybe know me, we work with companies in almost every single major market, and then even in a lot of smaller markets. So we have a wide swath of all over the country. And there are places in the country that are just bulletproof to the economy. I was talking to somebody this morning who's in one of those bulletproof areas. They sell really expensive, like construction type projects. They are booked into 2023. Their backlog, even of potential clients, is significant. It's like no one is really being phased by the headlines. Then there's some people that I know that are in other parts of the country that might be a little bit more compromised in terms of what's going on in the economy, and they're starting to be a little bit having some discretionary in terms of their decisions, in terms of where they're spending their money. And so I do see that it is geographically influenced, and I also think that it has to do with what business you're in. Are you a commodity, non-commodity? Are you specialized or are you non-specialized? Do you target residential? Do you target commercial? So on and so forth. And I really do think that has a lot to do with it. And I think that there's just going to be this kind of swaying of those companies based on what industry they're in, the geographic area, and what segment of their clientele they're actually targeting.
Yeah, that makes sense. And, our primary interest for Smart Business Moves is the residential cleaning industry. And one of the things that I've been hearing and trying to get my mind wrapped around is kind of the shift in consumer thinking that residential cleaning is being considered less of a discretionary investment and more of a staple.
Mhm.
Seems like it wasn't that long ago that the economy gets a little bit rough and people start thinking about how can I cut things out of my budget, that the house cleaning was at the top of the list, or one of the top considerations. I'm hearing more and more now that we'll make cuts in a lot of different areas, but nobody either wants to or knows how to clean their home anymore.
Well, I had not thought about that, but I actually think that you're totally correct. And here's the other part. I have virtually always worked from home, especially the last 12 years of my life. But a lot of people have moved. They're working from home. Um, Even still, kids are home kind of more often, and so the fact that the house needs to be cleaned is a little bit not more important, but maybe more timely because
Yeah,
people are home more often. I think that most people like a clean home. Of course, there's those people that don't, and I'm sure you could tell stories all day long about that. That are just they don't keep a tidy home, and they don't care to either. But the reality is that I think that most people do want that, and the more they're home, the more they want their space to be clean and organized and all that. So I think that is very, very true.
your home is your office now, so you're spending all your time there in some cases for a lot of
Yep,
people, more so than
totally.
they used to pre-COVID.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely. I think that the other thing that I would say, kind of to follow up on what I was talking about a couple of minutes ago, is that I think that businesses need to be very aware of what's going on in their marketplace. They need to be paying attention to those trends. I don't necessarily know that they need to react or overreact, but they absolutely need to have a level of awareness, because I don't want anyone to wake up one day and realize, oh, I didn't plan for potentially, my business to get a little bit smaller. One of the things that we've seen is that in 2022, because 2021 was also a really great year for most people in this space, that they built up a business model and an overhead to grow, and that means more overhead. And when you have more overhead, it also might mean a little bit more debt. And did I just freeze?
No, your audio is coming through fine, but your video froze. Still
Hmm.
is.
Oh, it
There
came
you go.
back.
You're back.
The thing that I've seen is that they built up this overhead. Maybe they've taken on a little bit of debt by buying some assets or moving into a new facility with the desire to grow, which makes all the sense in the world. But if the business is going to teeter back a little bit in 2023, you need to be prepared for how you're going to continue to service that overhead. And it's really, really, really important that somebody has a plan and they pay attention to that, and they have a level of awareness so they can pivot quickly. The worst thing that you want to do, build an overhead for a business this size, have the business be this size, and continuing to service that higher overhead, because all it's going to do is drop those cash balances and the ability to have profit. And that's really important. Sometimes it's too late for people because they don't make the hard decision about reducing some of that overhead in advance of when it needs to be reduced.
So keeping an eye out for trends and things that might be happening in 2023, part of the planning process. Are there certain things in particular that you would recommend cleaning business owners to be paying special attention to as they get ready to go into 2023?
I think that the best thing that they can do is to pay attention to their current clientele. Are they asking for skips regularly where they don't want to have cleaning done? Is there a situation where a credit card declines, or they're not credit worthy anymore? They haven't paid a bill. They find that people are a little bit more micro critical of the work because they want to try to get more value out of their dollars. Really watching that client sentiment is very important. The other thing that I tell people to do is to pay attention to the new client discussions. Okay. So you have a new client. So that's your existing clients. Pay attention to their behaviors. But your new clients, are they being more critical about pricing when you haven't changed their pricing? Are they being more critical about the scope of work? They want more for less. They are asking questions that's not typical or your close ratio goes down. That's all a larger indicator that maybe there's something rumbling in the geography or the community that you're working in, where people are being a little bit more, like I said, discriminatory or discretionary about the way that they spend their money. And that could be an indicator of something that's a little bit larger that's going on in the world that could cause some harm to the business, because people want to slow down the fact that they're buying, or they want to change their scope, or whatever it might be.
So one of the things that I guess is unique for just about anybody who's running a business at this point, I don't think any of us were around doing this 40 years ago, the last time there was any meaningful inflation in the economy, and certainly
Yep.
seems like it's there now, and seems like that we'll definitely be dealing with it in 2023. As far as the planning process is concerned, are there any special considerations that we should be giving to inflation and what prices are now and what they might be a year from now?
Great question. So I have been a proponent, I think we've even talked about it on this show before. I've been a proponent of really right sizing the pricing and having that tie back to metrics that reside in the financials for any business, including the residential home cleaning sectors. And if you have not raised your prices in the last couple of years, I still know people who have just not. They're afraid to. They are afraid they're going to lose clients. Then you're almost a little bit behind the eight ball right now, because the economy has accelerated faster than your prices have, and you might need to right size prices in a significant way, which means people might want to kick the tires and get an estimate elsewhere. But if you have been raising prices, so I know people that have raised prices 4 to 6 times in the last 2 years. They've literally been aggressive and assertive about raising prices over the last couple of years to right size pricing so that they can right size pay to their employees. Try to give those raises and get people to be paid a little bit more as a result of what's going on with the job market, and how people are just paying ridiculous amounts of money for employees. If that's the case, okay, so let's say that you've been one of those companies who's regularly raised your prices. The kind of the number that I'm hearing out there is, I haven't heard what the October number is, and it probably won't come out for another 10 or 15 days. But the last time I checked, January through the end of September, the number was a little less than 7%. And a little less than 7%. Now, a lot of people are using this 8 and 9% number. That's 12 months, okay? But if you go back to January 1st through now, it's probably somewhere between 6 and 7% based on CPI, which is documented by the federal government. I've heard people want to try to go into 4 to 5%. They don't want to try to take their entire clientele and nail them with that 7 or 8% number, trying to go in at a 5%. Now, here's the crazy part, okay, Tom? So, and it's insane, because let's say, what's the, you might know this, what's the average residential home cleaning business revenue per year? Average.
There was a time when a cleaning business got past $1 million a year that was considered to be rare.
Okay.
I would say that that might not be the average, against, because there's a whole lot of startups and smaller companies out there, but it's definitely north of a $500 million, I would say, pushing $1 million.
So think of it this way: if you get way above the clouds, and it's a $500,000 business, right, per year, right, and you raise prices 5%, that's an extra 25 grand. That's right there, an extra $25,000 that company will have. Now, if they do nothing in terms of paying their people more, that's at $25,000 of additional profit. I think sometimes people think that the small common denominator of raising prices 5 percentage points, right? And let's say the average, house is $100 to make the math easy. If somebody's paying $100, will they be willing to pay $105 to have their house cleaned? I would say they would. I would actually say that they'd be willing to pay 107 or 110, or maybe even the elasticity is back to 115. that's a 15% increase. And so each person needs to kind of go through a process where they understand pricing increases, the impact that has on the client, and what the threshold is that they might lose the client or at least go into kicking the tires to get a competitive estimate.
We have a calculator that we share with Made Central users that they can plug in a few metrics and then say, I'm going to do a 8% price increase, and I'm going to assume I'm going to lose 2% of my customers, and it'll do the calculation and it'll tell you how much extra money you're still making, even with the attrition. And what we're finding is it's not so much, I mean, you're better off, or at least you're going to have less attrition, customer churn, if you do multiple increases over the course of the year of a smaller amount. You can get away with doing 2 to 5% increases over a 1 year period than doing 10% increase.
Absolutely true. There's been lots of case studies out there that you also can be strategic about the timeline that you raise prices. Okay, like when you go to do it, what part of the calendar, and it might be at a time you probably don't want to go and raise prices. I'll call it in July and August, and here's the reason why. Most families who probably have house cleaning, they're sending their kids back to school, they're finishing that vacation, they're getting a big large credit card bill in the mail from that vacation, and they've got to pay tuition. And so try to be strategic about the timeline. The other time to do that is not during the holidays. That's when people feel like, oh my gosh, we're buying gifts and we're hosting family and we're buying turkey dinners and all that. And so to be strategic about the timeline of going and doing that.
In the house cleaning industry, though, there is a school of thought that before the holidays is the best time to do a rate increase, because that's the last time anybody wants to lose their cleaning service, because they need it most for the holidays.
That's an interesting thought process. Who knows? I wonder if anybody's that's watching has any data on that, if they've done a price increase. And I know you come with lots of data in there, but that's really an interesting thought process, is that at a time where there's high expenses, that's the time where they don't want to lose, because that's the time of the biggest vulnerability, that if their house isn't clean for Thanksgiving dinner or Christmas or Hanukkah or New Year's or whatever it is, then all of a sudden they're not able to, they're have an additional stress, so they're willing to pay a little bit more. Very interesting ideology.
And the worst time to do it is in January, because that's when the credit card bill shows up for all the holiday shopping.
Right. That's a good point.
I don't know how real that is. I think anniversary dates mean something, because if they started your service in January, evidently they're comfortable spending money in January. If they started in June, they're comfortable spending money in June. That being said, in 2022, 2023, when prices are going up, there's no rule that says that you can only increase your prices once a year. You might want to accelerate that a little bit and do 2 more modest rate increases for incumbent customers going into 2023.
Yep, I totally agree. I think that's great. Oh, Liz, I thought it was just me, because you've missed the last couple of times that I have been on the show.
Once, Jason, once.
Jason was just, Liz doesn't like me. That just must be it. Every time he's on the show, you can pretty much count on Liz not being here.
Okay, one time. And I also said to Tom just today, oh, Jason's going to be on there. You'll be fine. I'm not going to worry about being late. I legit said that.
She's worried. She's worried about me when she leaves me alone. She wants to make sure, I've got a guest that can carry the show.
Yeah. Well, I should probably log off then. So, no, I'm giving a little bit of shade, Liz, because I think last time you weren't feeling well or something had occurred or something. So it's good to see you. How you doing?
You see me flying in here, taking off my coat and everything. So
that's true.
I was racing to get here.
Didn't want to miss a moment.
Well, it is kind of true, actually. I love Jason, so I feel like you always bring the goods.
We were
Well, again,
waiting
I'm going to
for
log
you.
off.
And we were waiting for you, Liz. We saved some of the good stuff till you got here. You know what this week was?
Jolts report.
Jolt's report.
Jolts
Oops,
report.
I'm sharing my entire screen. I don't mean to be doing that, but we'll just do that. So how about that? You can't see that, can you?
I can't. It's
Oh,
teeny,
good.
teeny,
Looks like everybody's
tiny.
raising their prices.
Well, what's happening is the open jobs went down in August, but they're back up again in September. And that was not supposed to be happening.
Oh.
What we want to see is the number of job openings continuing to go down. The fewer job openings, then the more job hunters per opening, and presumably the easier it is for those of us who do have open jobs, it would be to hire them.
Yeah.
We're back up to like 1.9 openings per job hunter at the moment.
Well, darn.
If you go down to like hospitality and leisure, it went up about another 250,000, I guess. So
Yeah.
it's we're not out of the woods yet in terms of having the labor. And you know, there's a school of thought out there that it's going to be this way for the next, you know, for the balance of this decade anyway. That it's going to be a long time coming until we can sit back and hire and comfortably fill all the positions that we have in our businesses.
So interesting statistic, if I could share. So that is a bummer, and you and I talked about that right before we went on the air, Tom. But an interesting statistic that I have, and this really applies to everyone that would be watching this, is that we're finding. So I think some of you all know that we do a bunch of HR work, and so we touch those hires pretty often in terms of interviewing them. And one of the things that we're finding is that there are good people out there that have top level talent, and the reason that they're out there is because they're really sick of working for a bad company or a bad boss, or somebody who doesn't manage them, or somebody who has a temper problem, or somebody who, you know, promised them some level of compensation and it just never came through. And so there is talent that's out there, and the reason they're leaving is pretty systemic to their own situation, where they came from. And that just points towards the element that I am so passionate about. I've been passionate about for the last 15 years of my career, that you have to run a great company, and you have to be a good person, and you have to be kind, and you have to have empathy and compassion, but you also have to manage people, and you got to call them out on things, and you got to make sure that you're doing the right thing, and you got to let your yeses be your yeses and your no's be your no's. And if you say you're going to be married to this compensation package, to make it happen, and to build a really positive culture. And that is something that I think is really, really, really important, that everyone understand, is that they have to run a good ship in terms of the way that they communicate with people and to care for them and so on and so forth. That is paramount. And those that are seeking jobs today want that. They need that. They demand that. They're not interested in taking dollars when they're going to be treated poorly, or when they're working for a poorly run company, or a company that's not well financed, or whatever it might be.
Well, I think that's always been the case, but what you're saying is it's even more pronounced now, right? I mean, it's just ever since the whole big shift, people are like, yeah, I don't have to anymore. I'm not doing it.
Well, I do think so. And I think that what I think happened, of course, you know, Liz, it's a little bit speculative on my part, but I think that people maybe ran to a company for a dollar reason, and that they found out that the grass wasn't necessarily greener on the other side of the fence. They recognized that maybe part of the reason for an additional higher than market wage was because the company had a turnstile because of culture and retention and all these things that I just mentioned.
Yeah.
And, you know, Liz and I, you know, had some experience doing business. Should we tell the Portland story? And this was pre-COVID, and That was my first introduction to this concept of work-life balance.
Mm-hmm.
We heard a lot of that.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm in Charleston, South Carolina. I need to Google that. I don't even know what it is.
Yep.
It seems like that was kind of a precursor to where we are now everywhere. And, it makes sense when you think about it, but it's a paradigm that maybe was slow coming in some places, and for some of us, maybe we're still figuring it out. But if you're going to be competitive in the marketplace today, if you don't know what that is, Google it and figure it out, and you need to find it in your business.
Yeah. And what people consider work-life balance is different than what they considered 5 years ago. Work-life balance just meant that when you finished work, you were able to go home and not work anymore, and then focus on your family. And then when you went to work, you were able to go to work and not focus on your family. That was work-life balance, right? 5 years ago. Now work-life balance is work this much time, just enough that you can have an abundant life, and work much, much less and spend much more time not working. That wasn't a consideration back then. Everybody worked 40 hours, period. That was the thing.
Take your policy manual one page at a time and ask yourself, what here is absolutely a must-have from the company standpoint, and what here is negotiable. It's a lot of things that we have in our policy manual that maybe made sense pre-COVID that, it would be nice to have, but if you give up some of those things or compromise or become more adaptable, if you will, that, you'll get that back by having a larger, more engaged workforce.
Yeah. And we talk to people all the time. 3 years ago, 2 years ago, right before COVID, no, there were companies that thought we could not operate a cleaning business with any part-time people.
Right.
It wasn't possible.
You say pre-COVID, though. You're talking about almost 3 years ago now. COVID.
What? Yeah.
Yeah, January. It started in January of 2020. So, in China, actually, it was in 2019.
Yeah.
I brought it back. I was overseas in January of 2020, and I came home and I was deathly ill. So I believe I brought it to the United States.
You're the one.
I am the one. Hey, you know what? I did a little Googling while I was here, while you were talking about work-life balance, because I remember many years ago I wrote an article about work-life balance. I'm going to hit the high points because I think it's important. Number one, manage your time, meaning it's okay to say no to work. Number two, work from home. Isn't that weird? This one's a little bit aged. Number three, hire your weakness, build your team around you, make sure that you have a dynamic team. 4, resist weekend work. Close that laptop, turn off the computer notification or a phone notifications. 5, take a retreat. Get away from your work area and go someplace and think about business. Number 6, go on vacation. And really, 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 really do number 7, which is unplug. Number 8, schedule things with yourself. I do that even today. I block parts of my calendar to work on projects or to do things for myself. Number 9, join a peer group, which I know you all do. Like be with your peers, learn from people. And number 10, make sure that you are always investing in self. This is an article that I wrote a long time ago, and I just Googled it and I found it. And it's one of those things where I think that when people have that level, and I know it's shifted and changed over the years, but work-life balance is super powerful. And for me, it's literally like a level of rocket fuel to make me a better person in the way that I work with people and run my own company and advise people how to run their companies when I have a good work-life balance. If I'm tired and I'm cranky, I'm certainly not doing good work on the other side. I think you guys would agree with that, on your end as well.
Jason, if you look off to the right-hand side, there's a chat area. You can take that URL and drop it in the chat, and I can share it with everyone.
Oh, somebody needs a vacation. Take it, Facebook user. I don't know who you are, but you need a vacation? Get it on the books. And actually, I'm not joking. So really, back to what Jason said, Schedule it now, because if you don't schedule it, guess what? In 6 months, you're still going to be saying, I need a vacation. 6 more months, I need a vacation. You got to get it scheduled.
You're so right. So Liz, interestingly enough, you didn't hear us because we started out on this. Tom was asking me why this makes the busy time of year. And normally, I would just like October 1st to March 1st, just work. Now I started this right before COVID. I now take a few strategic vacations in the middle of the crazy season because I realize that it actually is fuel for my ability to do better work.
Yeah.
And I think that it's a little bit counterintuitive. You think, oh my gosh, you're in the middle of your busy season. Why take a vacation? You're asleep at the wheel. No, not at all. It actually is an energy booster so that I can do better work in the midst of all of that.
I'm not a huge vacationer.
Really?
I know. I don't love being on vacation. Sometimes I like going and visiting my grandbaby, but like I don't really love the whole unplugged all the way thing. It's not enjoyable for me. It's not fun.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different ways of looking at this and approaching it, and I know I have an affliction. I enjoy working, so the idea of taking a vacation, I mean, I do it occasionally, but a day doesn't go by that I'm not checking email and logging in and doing a couple of things. It's just what I do.
For fun.
For fun, yeah.
See my friends. I want to do my things.
You could argue that's not healthy, and you could, if that was a habit that I modified, I mean, good grief, I can imagine like being unplugged for a week.
Well, okay, so I do that though. I do. I just don't really enjoy it.
Well, why do you do it?
Because anyone who's a business.
It's like.
All right, Jason, what? Tell us how messy.
I think that anybody that's a business owner, including us three crazy people, we love to work. We almost have like a really healthy, maybe unhealthy addiction to it. But I've found that it's still okay or still appropriate to to unplug a little bit. In fact, when I talk to an entrepreneur who doesn't want to work. Now, I understand if they want to retire or they built a really dynamic business and they want to be an absentee owner or whatever that might be. But my gut tells me that once an entrepreneur, always an entrepreneur. They're going to go do something else when they retire or they're an absentee. They're going to go do something else, to go and like to feed that intellectual mindset of building something again. I at least that's my experience.
Yeah.
I think you're right. Like that this certain personality type, right? It's fun. Like, why would I want to stop doing this? It's so much fun. Oh, we got some other people. I like working all the time. Hey, Denise. Hey, I don't know. Is that Facebook user that likes working all the time? Are you the one that also needs to go on vacation? We have a lot of Facebook users today.
Yeah. If you're logged in, if you're watching us in a group, there's we don't get a chance to see your name.
There's a way for us to see them. I just can't remember what it is.
Yeah, I'm copying the instructions and I'll paste it.
But if you're the one that needs a vacation and you like to work all the time, I feel your pain, right? But if you said you need a vacation, so even though you like to work all the time, go on vacation, right? That's what Jason's saying. Sometimes it's going to energize you and it's going to make things better.
Yeah, I mean that's probably the good advice. I mean I know for a fact that has to be good advice.
Because everyone knows it.
Just I don't follow it, but that's good advice. Email. Like I understand there's a way that you can set up something in your email that says, "Hey, I'm away this week. I'll get back to you when I get back." I've never even bothered to figure out how that works because it seems like a useless feature in my mind.
So Tom, it's called Out of Office, just so you know. I use it only when I know that I'm not going to be able to check email on a regular basis. Like if I'm in a massively different time zone, or I'm not going to have reliable internet service, I still read my phone. I don't know. We can go down a rabbit hole. We can talk the whole rest of the time about ways to vacation and vacation well and run a business and all that good stuff. But I don't use out of office unless I'm truly going to be unavailable, because I, like you, will still check my email when I'm on a trip or when I'm on vacation.
So what you're telling us is this advice is for everybody else, right, Jason?
No, because no, actually not, because pre-COVID, I won't go down this road, but pre-COVID, I had made a commitment to myself that I was going to take 2 trips per year overseas. And with the time zone change, it almost forced me to not be available at the time that other people were available. So I did put an out of office, and it created lots of boundaries because I was able to reply to messages on my timeline rather than, unfortunately, the person on the other end. I think you guys know, I reply to emails pretty darn quick. People that we work with, expect us to reply to emails pretty darn quick. So I always want to let them know if they're not going to get a pretty darn quick reply.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So, all right. Well, we could probably talk about this, go back and forth forever. What's our topic this month, Tom?
We were talking, we've been talking about several things, but the general direction we were going in, Liz, was this is the busy time of year for Jason, in part because it's planning season. We're kind of getting ready to think about 2023. Are there tax considerations I need to be, working on? What is my budget going to look like for 2023? What are the major strategic initiatives do we need to kind of get lined up? And I know, Liz, that you're really big on this. I think that you're even doing a workshop here pretty soon about your plan for 2023. Gratuitous plug.
Yeah, this weekend. Thanks, Tom. Yeah. It's too late, but yeah, this weekend. Yeah, we're doing down in Sacramento, 2-day goal setting workshop.
Sure.
And I really feel like it's late. I was trying to get behind ARCSI, but it feels a little late to be, just starting to do this. But I still think it's better than waiting longer, right? For people that haven't done it yet, haven't started.
Liz, why do you think it's late?
Because I really like to start thinking about, so whatever quarter I'm starting right now, I like to begin the process because that quarter is already laid out for me, right? The October, November, December are laid out. So in October, middle of October, I like to start thinking about the next quarter. But because the next quarter is we're not just going to be thinking about the next quarter. Before we do that, we have to do the whole year, and then we got to break down a lot more stuff than we do when we're just planning a quarter. So it feels kind of late to me, like middle of October maybe would have been better to get started, but it's only a few weeks late, so I'm good. I'm good.
Got it. Interestingly enough, you say that, and most people think about planning annually. They want to plan all of 2023. I actually think that the best planning is what you just described, quarter by quarter, because business changes, people change, client sentiment changes, financial situations change, the economy changes. There's so much that changes that I think, right? Yeah, right. And if you plan the entire year, think of in 2020, if you had planned the entire year and then all of a sudden COVID hit. Right. COVID hits, and then you've got to figure out, wow, how is this going to change? What does this look like? What is the difference? How am I going to manage people and deal with finances and so on and so forth? So I do agree with you that I think quarterly planning is really brilliant.
So here's what I like. I really like to set the annual plan, but not in detail. Like over the course of the year, where do I want to be at the end? And then kind of break it down by what are going to be my 4 main things that I'm going to work on next year? Which one? Sure. And then kind of put those in order based on need. And then this one I'm going to work on first quarter, this one second quarter. And you're right. When COVID hit, well, that plan's out the window, right? But I still feel like even though it does have to be adjusted, I like the idea of it having to be adjusted and having that be a regular part of the plan, that you should be planning to adjust, that this isn't a bad thing, that this is a normal part of the process. So I don't feel
you recast your plan every quarter based on more recent information.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like having that there because, well, Jason, you don't know, but Tom, you know, we work on, we break things down by quarter, set our plan, and then break it down by month. And then we have an accountability every single week. Are we doing the things for this plan? So I really like to, even weekly, just double check that I really am doing the highest value things this week, not just going with my gut. Because if you don't set the plan, what I've seen is the people in my circles that don't set the plan, they start going with their gut. They start putting out fires, and they end up putting out the wrong fires. Dude, you see that fire over there that's burning your company down? Why are you laminating stuff for your wall?
And you know, we were talking, Liz, before you joined, that, you know, there's some unprecedented things that we're dealing with as business operators that we just don't really even have, you know, firsthand experience of you know, how to deal with it. The inflation and how prices are going up, and it's everything from wages to, you know, the fuel we put in cars to all, you know, all our supplies and space and everything else. You know, there are a lot of us that have been running businesses where all that stuff's been fairly level year after year. And you know, we didn't really even have to manage it. We just did what we were doing, and there was money in the bank, you know, every Friday to cover payroll. And it might not work that way with prices going up at the way they are unless we are managing differently. And
agreed.
You know, that gets back to the planning process. That gets back to the numbers. Jason, you can speak to this. I know that you are like as big a numbers person as anybody.
I am. I don't know if I should admit it or not, but yeah, I
blew the whistle on you. I already ratted you out.
Yeah, I do really love to. I believe that every business needs to be run by numbers. I absolutely think that almost every critical and even non-critical decision can be made based on numbers. And I was alluding to it earlier that so many companies have invested in overhead for growth. And if we think that 2023 is going to be a little bit off, you need to really analyze that overhead. And do you need all of that overhead? Overhead might be, you know, customer support people or administrative or technology or client acquisition strategies or all of these different things that are variable based on how big your business is, right? And I think it's really important that anybody who's in tune to their numbers understand the difference between fixed overhead and variable overhead, and realize the variable overhead is going to go down based on what top line revenue is. Fixed overhead is fixed. You're going to pay the exact same amount in rent, whether or not you do $1 in business or $100,000 in business. And so if you've got a big building and you're doing $1 in business, then you maybe don't need that big building. You need to figure out a way to generate revenue, whether it be a subleasing part of that, or maybe getting out of your lease, or something to be able to reduce that fixed cost that you have in the business. Because what sometimes people do is they're so busy. Well, I use the terminology: do you want to chase revenue in business, or do you want to chase expense in business? Okay, and I love the. Maybe I'm going to disagree with Liz on that.
No, I love it.
I think that you should be chasing revenue in business, meaning like you build the expense and then you go chase the revenue. But if you're chasing expense, means that you are like in this level of extreme desperation to try to get the sale in the door, because you're chasing to try to feed the animal of expense. And that might be in hiring or your facility or your marketing company that you've hired or whatever it might be. There's all of these different categories. And so you're out there just chasing expense all the time. And it gets really exhausting running a business when you're chasing expense all the time.
It's not fun. But, you know, if you have a lease that is up for renewal next year, you might not want to assume that it's going to be comparable to what you've been paying in the past, because space costs have been going through the roof.
Absolutely.
Look at all your debt. You might have some notes, borrowed some money that's variable interest, and if so, you're paying a lot more interest now than what you were, a year or 2 years ago, and presumably even more moving forward. If you listen to what Federal Reserve told us today, you'll be paying more in the future than you are even now. All of these things are just changes that we're going to have to manage in our business for the last 10, 20 years even. You've never had to deal with situations like this before. Making the planning process and knowing your numbers even that much more important.
Absolutely. I'm glad you brought that up. A lot of people don't realize that lines of credit and credit cards are all based on prime. They're variable. Most all of them are based on variable rates. And so we are getting ready to possibly be paying twice as much interest, supposedly, if they raise the interest rates, what they say they're going to do, which I think is this week and next week.
Well, they went up 75 basis points today, which will.
Oh, today they did. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. And so then I think I said next week, I meant next month. And the first week of December, they're saying maybe 50 basis points, I think is what they're saying, which for those of you that don't know what a basis point is, it's 3/4 of a percentage point or half a percentage point. So when we get to that, if they raise the rates by 50 basis points in the first week of December, we're now paying almost twice as much interest on those exact same notes that we did a year ago. So that can be a budget buster depending on what you have. I mean, I'm writing some education right now on how to bulletproof your business for whatever is in the future. And one of the things is to be very aware of your variable interest rate and try to pay that off as best as you can. And I can't stress enough that the only way that you pay off debt is to make more profit. That's the only way. You can't refinance your way out of debt. And so it's really important. That's one of the key things, that if you want to bulletproof your business, make sure you don't have any variable interest rate debt. Sorry, variable interest rate debt.
Right. And if you have lines of credit you use in your business for, I don't know, receivables or just, other things in your business, as we go into 2023, there's a lot of, the consensus is building that we're going to have a technical recession and things are going to slow down. And oftentimes when that happens, banks get very conservative about lending money. Even though the interest rates are high, they don't want to lend money that they're not going to get back. So they're more conservative of lending. So, if you've got plenty of cash and have access to cash, all that's good. But if you're thinking, well, I've got this credit line, banks will pull back credit lines from you if things start getting tight. So just when you need it most, it might not be there. So these are things you need to plan on as well.
Absolutely. The old adage of ask for money from the bank, like in a form of a line of credit, when things are good, when your numbers look awesome, which might be right now, is really paramount. If things get tight and you go to ask for money from the bank, the answer is going to be no, because they're going to see it in your numbers and they are going to be hesitant to lend. Absolutely 110%.
Well,
Tom and I both have you sigh at the same time.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
There's a school of thought out there. And if you have a line of credit that you haven't tapped into and you're thinking, well, I'll just not borrow that money until I need it. If you read the small print, almost every line of credit that a bank gives you will say a business line of credit is that they can basically take that away at any time that they want to. Mm-hmm. So if you've pulled the money out, they can ask you to pay it back, but if you don't have it, you'll work out, some type of terms and whatnot. The point is, if you think that you're going to need it, it's worth considering taking the money out, borrow the money while it's available, because when things get tight, the bank might say, no, we changed our mind and we really don't want to let you borrow that money.
Yeah. So two things on that. Number one, most banks on lines of credit, revolving lines of credit, which basically is a factoring element to receivables or inventory or your assets, they bury into the.
I
Pardon
didn't
me?
get it. Explain that again, Jason. I didn't get what you said.
So most lines of credits that banks issue to businesses, it's a factoring to accounts receivable, inventory, or business assets. That's how they determine how much they'll let you borrow. Okay. And they almost always, in the fine print, like Tom said, put in one of the covenants that say that they can at any time start using a financial instrument called a borrowing base. Okay. A borrowing base is a document that they send you where you have to prove to them that you have this in accounts receivable, this in inventory, and this in assets. And they could recalculate the amount of money that you can borrow on your line of credit. So if they use a borrowing base, that's one of the ways, Tom, that they can reduce that credit limit. You could have a $200,000 line of credit, but you fill out the borrowing base and they only allow you to borrow 60 grand. That's it. Okay. That's the first thing. The second thing that's oftentimes in covenants with lines of credit is they can do what's called a sweep. If at any time the bank feels that you might not pay back the line of credit, I kid you not, I have clients that it's happened to, they can hit a button and they can take that money out of your operating account to pay the line of credit off with no notice whatsoever. It's called a sweep. So,
wow.
So what I recommend people to do, that if they get into that place where it's a little bit tense, pull the money out of the line of credit.
Tense.
What's that?
That's more than a little tense if they yank the money out of your account.
Happened to dozens of people that I know that get into a little bit of financial insecurity, or the bank gets into financial insecurity. So here's the other thing that can happen. The bank could begin to have a lot of problem loans, and they could say, we want to get as much cash in, because if banks don't have cash, they can't lend, and that's where they make their money. So it's very complex.
That makes sense, though.
But let's say things get tense in business and you want to pull from that line of credit and you pull $100,000, I strongly recommend you put that into another financial institution. That is correct.
Bank A can't take money from Bank B.
Right.
But if you borrowed money from Bank A and you've got all your checking account and so on and so forth.
Right. Oh, okay. That's awesome. Yeah, I would not even have thought of that. That is amazing.
No. The IRS can take money from your account from any bank.
Yes, they can. Yes, they can. That's a whole other conversation.
It's for another day.
But that's just some practicalities in terms of banking. And unfortunately, I'm on both sides of those. Really successful business that have great banking relationships, and non-successful businesses who have very tarnished banking relationships. And I promise you, this is a very real thing. They can sweep and they can borrowing base you immediately on that line of credit.
Wow.
And it's not a bad idea to hope for the best, but plan for the worst. And there is the possibility of some bad economic things ahead. We just don't know. So
right now, there has never been a better time that I have experienced that we need to be paying closer attention and making better plans, because things are so volatile. And so, they're just, we don't know what's going to happen. Just, again, coming off all this, and we're in unprecedented times. It's just,
I agree, but I also don't want to be like gloom and doom and everything. I mean, most of the people that I know that are running great businesses are still running great businesses, and they're having the best year that they've ever had. And I just want everyone to be aware that there's going to be ebbs and flows in the whole cycle of business, and you need to be very well prepared, because the last thing that you want to do is to get yourself into a situation where your surroundings that have nothing to do with you force business to go down a little bit, and you're not prepared for that. And then you get caught in a potential precarious financial situation. But it's not gloom and doom. I mean, things are still very, very, very strong in a lot of different businesses, and they're not seeing things be reduced. But we don't know what the future holds. We never know what the future holds.
There's a lot of there's a lot of strong reasons to go all into 2023 with the idea that you're going to grow your business, you're going to make a ton of money. If you're not going to, don't even get out of bed in the morning if you aren't thinking that. But be prepared. It's like I live on the coast of South Carolina. I'm always prepared for a hurricane. I don't wake up every morning looking for it, but you need to be prepared because every once in a while it happens. And this is, there could be a hurricane blowing around out there next year, and you just want to, if it happens, you want to be prepared for it.
All right. Well, we only have 5 minutes, Jason. If you had to tell people, I know, see, it goes fast. You know what you were thinking? That it goes so much slower when Tom is here all by himself.
Painful.
All right. So, but Tom will get us this.
No,
wrong website, Tom.
Where am I going?
JasonCupp.com.
Okay.
And actually, interestingly enough, we are like going to be launching a new website probably by Thanksgiving. That's the hope. Cross our fingers. We've been trying to do it for a while. Websites are a pain, aren't they? Right?
Oh my gosh, yes. All right. Before I let you go, if you had to, not if you have to, would you please give our audience the 3 things that you think they should do, top 3 things that they should do to prepare for whatever might come?
2024.
Yeah.
So for me, it's a number, and these are in no particular order, but there are the 3 things I think you need to do. I think number 1, I feel like I've said this before on the show, so it might be repetitive. I think number 1, people need to know where they make money in their business, where they don't make money in their business, where they can sell, and where they have the resources to be able to scale. So for example, if the viewers know that they can make money in residential cleaning in this particular neighborhood or segment of their area, they need to go and do that because that's where they make their most gross profit. I think sometimes business owners just throw the net wide and they're out there selling anything and everything. They don't know if they're making money, and it's all going into some big pot and they have no clue whether or not they're making money or not. So number 1, identify where you're making money and go and sell into that and make sure that you can scale into that as well. That's the first thing. The second thing is every single business needs to have a budget financial plan. This is how much money is going to come in. This is what it's going to cost to acquire those clients. This is what it costs to complete the work. This is what my overhead is. This is what my debt is. This is what my positive cash flow is. Budget is not just saying I'm going to do $100,000 in a month and I'm going to net $10,000 in a month. It is much more than that. It comprises your cost of goods sold, how much it costs to get your work done. It comprises things like client acquisition, your fixed costs, your variable costs, your net profit, your shareholder distributions, and your debt service. Really need to build an adequate and completely well thought out budget plan so that you have a money plan. Okay. The third thing you need to do is you need to have a people plan. I am convinced, and I have been on this soapbox for the last several years, that people are what makes a business go round and round and round and round. And if you don't have the best people, you might be struggling in some area. And you've got to make sure that you've got a really, really, really great team. That is something that's paramount. And if you have a good, strong balance sheet now's the time to invest in that team so that you can scale and you can build and you can hit those budget numbers in number 2.
So if you're listening to the show right now and saying, wow, a detailed budget sounds complicated, I'm not sure how to do that, or people plan, that sounds like a good idea, but how in the world do I do that? I dropped Jason's URL, his website, in the chat here. If you reach out to Jason, I'm going to go on a limb here, I bet you'd be glad to talk to people about that, and you could probably help them.
Yeah, I mean, we've got a team that does that, so we're happy to talk to people about those questions. I will say it starts with having at least accurate financials to be able to build that plan. If you don't have accurate financials, it's going to be really hard to build that plan and build it appropriately.
But if you don't have accurate financials, the best time to have done that is a long time ago. Second best time is today. And Jason could help you figure out how to do that too.
We'd be happy to.
Talking with people about this today. If you don't have data, stop fretting and just start getting it today. You got to start at some point. Start today.
We are at the top of the hour.
See,
it went fast.
Especially when Liz got here.
I knew I wanted to be
going a whole lot faster.
Sorry, y'all. Thanks so much, Jason. I'm so glad that I was able to make it here today. I do feel like you always give me stuff that, I take notes a lot, but I'm always getting good notes. I feel like I get good notes when you're on here, stuff that I can actually do. And
you're welcome. It's fun to be with you guys. I love it when I see on my calendar that I'm going to be spending time with you guys. It's easy and it's fun, and the people who are watching, they're fun too. So this is great.
Well, thanks, Jason.
We're going to call it a take for today, for this week. Jason, as always, you're awesome. Thank you very much for being with us today. Liz, we're going to be here next Wednesday, 5 o'clock Eastern. As far as you know, that's the plan. We will be here. We will be here next week, 5 o'clock Eastern. Please join us. Till then, take care. Bye-bye.
Take care.